Now we begin the sixth perek, Perek HaOmer. And the Mishnah says the following: HaOmer is kabel get zel ishti. I am now appointing you to receive this get on behalf of my wife. Or, alternatively, he says to Shliach, holech get zel ishti. I want you to bring this get and hand it over to my wife. In both of these cases, as long as she hasn't yet received the get into her hands, and the shliach is a shliach lahalacha, the gerushin has not been effectuated, it's not chal, and it'll only be chal when the get actually reaches her hands. So whether or not the Baal said holech or hiskabel, in both cases, he was appointing the shliach as a shliach lo loch. And we have a principle of ein chavin li adam shalom midato. The shliach cannot convert himself and serve as a shliach kabbalah, effectuating the gerushin immediately when the get reaches his hand, without the ratzon and the das of the Baal. The Baal only appointed him as a shliach leholacha. Now, you might ask the following question. If he says his kabel get, then maybe he's appointing a shliach lekabbalah, and the answer is he doesn't have the power and the authority to be memana to appoint a shliach lekabbalah. Only the isha could be memana shliach lekabbalah. And therefore, this shliach could only be a shliach lo and as such, as long as the get has not been delivered to her hands, he could be chozer bo. And be bevatel l'shlichus. However, ha'isha sha'omer is kabali Gittin, if she uses the same language that the Baal used to appoint his shliach, to appoint her shliach, then in Ratzalach Zayachzor, immediately with the transfer of the get from the Yad HaBaal into the Yad HaShliach, she's already megureshes. Why? Because the shliach was appointed by the isha as a shliach kabbalah. And that means that the yad ha-shliach is ki yad ha-isha, and the very moment it reaches the yad ha-shliach, she's already megureshes. It's too late for him to be chozer. But lefichach, since we said that the Baal does not have a possibility of being chozer, but once the get was given to the shliach, then what could the Baal do if he wants to be chozer bo? If the Baal had said to the shliach of the isha, I don't want to give you the get in such a way that you serve and function as a shliach lekabbalah and automatically the gerushin is clinched. I'm not willing to accept that you will be megureshes immediately with the kabbalah. I'm appointing you as a shliach lo. So that basically the Baal now is undermining and negating the shlichus as it was created by the Isha. So that even though the Isha said to the shlich is kabel ligiti, the Baal said he efshisha to kabbalah. And he doesn't want to give the get in such a way that immediately the gerushin be chal. Maybe he's embarrassed in this area, he wants it to happen there, maybe he wants to give himself room to back out of the deal, and therefore, holich v'tein la b'imrotza lachzor yachzor. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, af omeres toli giti imrotza lachzor yachzor. Not only if she says his kabali giti did she intend to appoint the shliach kabbalah, but even if she says, totally Giti, take my get on my behalf, he is a shliach lekabbalah. And that again means that immediately when the get reaches the hand of the shliach, she's megureshes, and the Baal cannot be chozer. And now we get to the Gemara. Now this Gemara is going to analyze a question that we've had in the past, a controversy about holech kischidami or holech lav kischidami. Like, for example, if a person says to his friend, take this thing to so-and-so, does he mean to imply that you should be zocha immediately on his behalf, or only to bring it to him? Amalei Rav Acha, Breder Rav Avil, Rav Ashi. Let's be medayik from our Mishnah, the Reish of our Mishnah. It says, "Oholech get zele ishtim ratzal lachzor yachzor." It means that holech lav kischidon. He's telling the shliach to bring the get to his wife, and the get does not become hers immediately when it reaches the hands of the shliach, and therefore the baal kavich until the get reaches her hand. Time lo shavise iu shliach lekabbalah, because she never appointed this shliach as a shliach lekabbalah to accept the get on her behalf. The baal does not have the authority to appoint a shliach as a shliach lekabbalah leisha, because that's a chov. And therefore the shliach is only a shliach leholacha of the baal, and therefore the baal can be chozero until such time as the get reached her hands. And all this is because she did not appoint the shliach as a shliach lekabbalah. Now let's be medayik. Ha shvise iu shliach lekabbalah. Had she appointed the shliach as a shliach lekabbalah, ratza lachzor lo yachzor. The get would be chal immediately when it came into her hands. But wait a minute. The Baal said to his shliach, "Holech get zel ishti," and that means that he's appointed the shliach as a shliach lo lacha. Shma mina holech is chidami. We see from this that when a person says holech, he's allowing the shliach to be zocha on behalf of the person to whom he's sending, in this case, the get. So therefore, included in holech is zechi, which means that the shliach now can be zocher on behalf of the makabel. In the case of the isha, that even though he said holek, but holek is chi, the shliach can be makabel on behalf of the isha. She had already appointed that shliach as a shliach lekabbalah, and therefore lo yachs. Lo, the Gemara rejects. Wait a minute, if holek lav kischidami, then even if she appointed the shliach as a shliach lekabbalah, but he said holech, and the Gemara says, "Vis kabel get liishtei itzrichle." The Mishnah mentioned the case of holech get zel liishtei for a case in which she did not appoint the shliach to serve as a shliach kabbalah on her behalf, and it means agav the reisha of his kabbalah giti, and there the Tana had to be mechadish that in such a case the isha was not memana shliach kabbalah on her behalf. I would have entertained the idea that the Baal does not have the authority to appoint a shliach lekabbalah to be zocher on behalf of the isha, and he never appointed the shliach as a shliach lo lacha because he said his kabel ligiti, his kabel get liishti is mimanavsha. Now it falls between the cracks, and therefore gav the mata gita, that even when the get reaches the hand of every gita, the get cannot be valid. And she's not megureshes. The Baal never agreed that the shliach should be a shliach lo locha because he said to the shliach his kabel get to isha. On the other hand, the shliach cannot serve as a shliach kabbalah on behalf of the isha because she never appointed him as such. Kamash malon, the Mishnah wants to tell me a chiddush that is kabel ve'holech ka'omar. The Tana had to teach me this chiddush that if the Baal says the shliach is kabel, what he really had in mind was kabel asaget mimeni ve'holech oso leisha. Not that the shliach should be makabel to get it immediately, the get should be chal, which of course the Baal cannot effectuate such shlichus, but rather his kabel means holech. So he's appointing the shliach lo locha, and therefore the moment that the get reaches the hands of the isha, she's megureshes. And now we have the agav, that once the Mishnah said the word is kabel, it also writes holech. But really what the Mishnah means is that it doesn't matter one way or the other, whether he says it's Kabel, whether he says Cholech, he is appointing a Shliach L'Holacha. Tanan, let's see if we could be medayik from the Mishnah that Holech Kischidami, Ha'isha Sha'amar is Kabel Gittin, Imrotza Lachsa Lo Yachsa. Now, what does that mean? We don't know whether or not the Baal sent the Shliach as a Shliach L'Holacha or a Shliach L'Kabbalah. But we know that she appointed the Shliach as a Shliach L'Kabbalah. And therefore, immediately when the get reaches the hands of her Shliach, she is Migureshes. My lav lo shna Kabbalah lo shna L'Holacha. The Mishnah doesn't seem to make any distinctions. And if we go back to the Reisha, it doesn't matter whether or not the Baal said is Kabel get liishti or Holech gets at liishti. In both of these cases, if the Shliach was appointed by the Isha as a Shliach l'Kabbalah, she's Megureshes immediately with the Kabbalah. So we see that Holech is Chidami. Because if you don't hold Holech is Chidami, but rather Holech means you have to be Molech and give it to the Isha, why can't he be Choser Bo before the get reaches the hand of the Isha? And therefore, we see clearly that Holech Kischidami. Lo, the Gemara rejects it. Akabola. We could say that the Mishnah is talking about the case of Hiskabel. And with the word Hiskabel, the Baal has revealed his intention that he agrees and he gives his full consent that she could be Miskareshes immediately with the Kabbalah Saget. And that's why he can't be Choser. And that's even if Holech Lav Kischidami, but this is a case specifically of his Kabel. Hashma, perhaps we could derive from the Sefer of the Mishnah that Holech Kischidami. Lefichach, once we established that he cannot be Choser, once the get was given her Shliach. So the only way the Baal could be Choser Bo is only im Omar Lo Baal Efshi Shetekabel Lo. I refuse to give my approval and consent to the Shliach serving as a Shliach L'Kabbalah. Ela Holech v'tein lo. I want the Shliach to be a Shliach L'Holacha. I don't want the Shliach to receive the get and she'll be Megureshes immediately, and therefore Yachal Lachsa Yas. So again, the reason why the get is not chal until it reaches our hands, time of the Yomi Yefshi, because he made a declaration that I disapprove of the Shliach serving as a Shliach Kabbalah. Efshi shetekabel. Lo Omar efshi. The implication is, had he not said efshi, had he not expressed his definite disapproval of the Shliach serving as a Shliach L'Holacha, Ratza Lachsar, Lo Yachsa. He can only be Choser because he expressed his indignation that he doesn't want the Shliach to serve as a Kabbalah. He said efshi. But had he not said Efshi, then he cannot be Choser. Shma Mina Holech Kischidami. We see that when he says Holech, he implies that the Shliach should serve as a Shliach L'Kabbalah, exactly as he was appointed by the Isha, and therefore Lo Yachsa. Because he didn't say Efshi. And the Gemara rejects it, Dilma Behelech. We should change the gears in the Sefer. I should say, Efshi shetekabel lo ele helech v'tein lo. When he adds the words helech, then he seems to indicate helech, take it immediately, and be mekabel it on behalf of the Isha. He's masking to the Isha, as if he had said helech kamosha amra, take it exactly the way she had appointed you to take it. And therefore, unless he says explicitly, Ein ritzoni shetekabel shliach avura, and I want that the gerushin should be chal when the get reaches her hand. If he didn't say that, then for sure she's miskareshes miyad immediately b'kabolas hashliach, because he added the words halach. But if He says here, Masha enke v'yomel halach yishmog lo mashahol halach lav kischi nami. Right. So Gemara says pshita. This is a slightly new sugya. It's pasha that ish havishliach lo lach. A man could be a shliach lo lach. Shekain baal molech get li ishto, because he's included in nesinas haget. It's also clear that isha havi shliach lekabbalah. Shekain isha mekabelas gittin miyad baila. She's included in kabbalas haget. But here's the suffix: ish lekabbalah, ish lo lach amai. Can a woman serve as a shliach lo lacha? And can a man serve as a shliach lekabbalah? Is it enough to say that he or she is b'toras gerushin, or do we have to say that he or she has to be b'toras that role in gerushin? And he cannot be a makabel get, she cannot be a molech get, and therefore the shliach has to be a bar hachi of whatever he's being appointed. If he's a man and he's being appointed shliach halacha, that's fine. But an isha cannot be a shliach halacha because she cannot give a get. A baal cannot be a shliach kabbalah because a man can never receive a get. Ashma, and the Gemara is going to bring a number of proofs to establish that it doesn't matter whether or not the shliach is a male or a female, a shliach lebal, shliach leisha. Omer is kabel get zeli ishti, or holith get zeli ishti, and rotza lachs or yachsa. And then the Mishnah continues: Isha sha'omer is kabeli giti, and rotza lachs or lo yachsa. Now it sounds like that same shliach is serving two capacities, wearing two hats. He's functioning both as a shliach lo lach lebal and a shliach lekabbalah isha, my labachad shliach. Shmamina kosher lekabbalah, kosher lo locha. That a man could be a shliach lekabbalah. He was appointed as a shliach kabbalah because it's the same shliach of the Baal, who's now serving in two capacities at the same time. Lo b'shnei shluchim. We could say the Mishnah is talking about a case where there were two minuyei shlichus. Right, the Mishnah is talking about a shliach lo locha who's an ish, and the next part of the Mishnah is the shliach lekabbalah is an isha. Toshma, let's look at the sefer. Lefichach im omar lo baal abal ef she should tekabel lo ela holech v'tein lo, even if she was there was a shliach appointed by her as shliach kabbalah for the isha, but nevertheless the baal protests. He says, "No, I want the shliach to be molech." Means that he can nullify the ability of the shliach to function as a shliach kabbalah. Here we're definitely talking about one shliach. She appointed a shliach as a shliach kabbalah, and now the Baal is saying, I don't want this shliach to serve as a shliach kabbalah. I want the shliach to serve as a shliach lo lach. Shmamina kosher kabbalah kosher lo lach. The same person could be a shliach lekabbalah of the isha. He could be a shliach lo lach of the ish. So we see that the gender doesn't play any role. Gemara says pshot miya ish havi shliach kabbalah. Wait a second. You can only prove in one direction. You can prove that an ish could serve as a shliach lekabbalah, because obviously he's saying to this shliach, I don't want you to serve as a shliach lekabbalah. He's nullifying his status as such because she had appointed him as a shliach kabbalah, and he's rejecting that. So you see that a male could serve as a shliach lekabbalah, but what about the opposite direction? And the reason why we would specifically tip the scale in favor of a man being a shliach lekabbalah skita shekena av makabel get lebito aktana. The Torah recognizes the marriage that a father received for his bas ktana, and he could be makabel agita if, as a ktana, she's being divorced by her husband. So you see that a man could serve as a shliach lekabbalah. The father is serving as a shliach kabbalah on behalf of his pita ktana. But isha, Lo lochati boy lachmai. We don't know what's the status of an isha as far as shliach lo loch is concerned, because she can never serve in a capacity to bring a get and give a get. Rav Mori Toshma, we had a Mishnah back on Daf Chav Gimel. Af hanoshim ein nemonis lo meis pilot nemonis lo is gita. Even though the woman is a shliach and she wouldn't be believed to say Meis Baila because she's Chamosa, Ben Chamosa. It's one of those 5 cases of Sono Zuazu. But nevertheless, she is believed to bring a get from the Baal and to testify b'fanei nechta. So Hasam Alochi, and there she is bringing her own get from Medina Sayav as a Shliach Lo Locha. And you see that a woman could serve in the capacity of Shliach Lo Locha. And Rav Ashi is going to add another proof to draw the same conclusion. Miseifa nami shmamino. The Ketani v'Seifa, it says in the Seifa Isha Atzma Mevias Gita. She could bring her own get from Medina Sayyam as a Shliach Lo Locha the Baal. Ubevad she tzricha lo b'farei nechta vo kimna bel locha shmamino. We see that a woman can serve as a Shliach Lo Locha. Itmar, if a woman says to a Shliach, Have ligite, I'm not appointing you as my yad to be makabel legerishin as a shliach lekabbalah, but rather I want you to be a carrier pigeon to bring the get from my husband to me. So that's called a shliach lehava. It's not a shliach lo'loch because she can't appoint a shliach lo'loch, but she can appoint a shliach lehava. Now, the shliach came to the father, to the husband, and tried to fool the husband. The Omer, and he says to the husband, Ishtacha Amra hiskabel ligit, meaning that she appointed me as a shliach lo lach, which is a fib. It's not true. She had appointed him as a shliach la'ava. What did the Baal say in response? Omar. He says to the shliach, Hele kamosha Amr, I'm giving you the get, and you will serve in the capacity that you were appointed as such. Now, before Rav Nachman, we would assume that in such a case, since he said, Hele Kamosha Amra, and she had appointed the Shliach as a Shliach LeKabbalah, therefore the Shliach could be and function as a Shliach Kabbalah. Rav Nachman, Rav Avua, Rav, no. Afilu Gia get liyoda Eina Megureshes. In other words, not only is the shliach not able to function as a shliach lekabbalah, because after all, the isha did not appoint him as a shliach lekabbalah, but rather as a shliach lehava. But even as a shliach lehava, he can't serve. And when she receives the get, she is not megureshes. 1 second. Why did he say that? Yeah, so I'm sorry, we have to read more of the Gemara. The Gemara is going to have to explain this. I mean, why is Rav Nachman saying that even if she receives the get, okay, fine, the shliach is only a shliach lahava, and the Baal said, Hail Kamosha Amra, so then fine, she said that he's a shliach lahava, so when she receives the get, she should be megureshes. So in order to introduce the Gemara's explanation here for Rav Nachman, we're going to have to mention the Gemara about Metzia Daf Ayin Vav. The Gemara there deals with the question of a Baal Bayis who tells his shliach, go out and hire Paul at the rate of 4 dinrim. And he, the shliach of the Baal Bayis, went out and he hired them b'shlosha dinrim. And the Gemara there vacillates about the following issue. did the Baal Bayis believe the Shliach? And basically, if the Shliach hired them at the price of 3, the Baal Bayis is tacitly in approval, or shall we say that the Baal Bayis offered them 4? And even though the Shliach only offered them 3, these Paulim accepted whatever the Baal Bayis, the masker, is going to be willing to pay, and he's willing to pay 4. So the Gemara says, Shmami no, from the din of Rav Nachman, who says that even if the get reaches her hand, she's not Megureshes, we can prove that Adibura Didei Kasam, that the intention of the Baal, when he says Hela Kamosha Amra, is that he's relying on the Shliach. He believes whatever the Shliach said. And that's called Adibura Didei, Didei in the masculine, referring to the Shliach. So he believes that the Shliach says, in the name of the Isha, to be makabel to get on her behalf. So the Baal did not intend to give the get into the hands of the Shliach as a Shliach l'Lacha, but rather as a Shliach l'Kabbalah. And therefore, the Gerushin is invalid, because she never appointed this Shliach as a Shliach l'Kabbalah. So even though the get reaches her hand, she's not Megureshes, the Baal only appointed the Shliach as a Shliach Kabbalah, but not as a Shliach L'Olacha. If we're going to say that the intention of the Baal was to say, I'm only somech on what the Isha said to you in truth. I'm not listening to you what you said. I want to know what she said. And then, when the Shliach is makabel get, she's not Megureshes because the Isha didn't appoint him as a Shliach Kabbalah, but nevertheless, but how could Rav Nachman say that even if the get reaches her hand, there's no valid gerushin? It should be a valid gerushin because the Baal has in mind whatever the Isha in truth said, and she appointed Shliach le-hava, and therefore when he says Kimosha Omra, it means that the Shliach should be a Shliach le-hava. Or for the Baal's perspective, Shliach L'Olach, it's all the same. So from the factor of Nachman Paskins that she's not Megureshes, we have to assume that according to the view of Rav Nachman, the Baal is relying on the Shliach, who says whatever he says in the name of the Isha. So now we could be poshet l'gabi polim, that their das, when they agreed to be hired, was Masha Omar Hashliach. That the Mishalech is Somech al Direi Shliach. Omar Rav Hashi Yochi Hashta, can you prove from Rav Nachman that the Baal is Somech on the Shliach? And here we turn to Daf Samach Gimel Bishlema I Itmar Ibcha. If Rav Nachman would have offered his ruling in the opposite scenario, from the scenario that we had here on Samach Beis on the base, then you could be poshet min advar. Could go, like for example, if the Isha said is kabali giti, and she wants the shliach to serve as a shliach l'Kabbalah, the shliach comes back to the Baal and says ishtcham rahavi liishti pumfaker. The shliach claims that she appointed him as a shliach la'ava and not as a shliach la'ava. Who Omar Hela Kamosha Amra. And he said, I'm giving you the get the way she said. If in this case, Rav Nachman would validate the get when it comes to her hands. Then we see clearly that he, the Baal, is somech on what she said. She said is kabli giti. And therefore the shliach is serving as a shliach l'Kabbalah, and immediately when the get reaches the hands of the shliach, she is megureshes. Inami, if Rav Nachman would have paskined in the opposite case, when the get reaches her hands, she's megureshes. Adibur didei kasava. The Baal is somech on the words of the shliach, who says the name of the Isha, that she wants me to be molech the get. And then the shliach becomes the shliach lo the Baal. So the Baal appointed him as a shliach lo, and therefore, when the get reaches her hands, she's megureshes. And therefore, Rav Nachman, according to Rav Ashi, Elahacha, Mishum di Akre Shliach L'Shechusa L'Gamri. Okay, this is already for tomorrow. So let's make a note of where we get up to. And tomorrow is Yom Shlishi, correct? Okay, then. So I wish you a great day. And we began the 6th parak. It's good to get back into Gittin after this whole long detour where we weren't involved in Masechet Gittin.